So to understand what's going on when you get the scratch disk error, let's talk about what a scratch disk is in the first place. Uh, your computer, whenever it's working on anything, loads that information into RAM. RAM is the memory that your computer has for what you're working on right now. I think of it like a kitchen countertop when you're making dinner. Anything that you want to get out that you're going to put into your food, you're going to get on the kitchen countertop so you can see it, so you can work with it. If you have a really small kitchen countertop, then you've got to put stuff someplace else. Now, in that picture, there's another countertop behind it. And that's basically what your computer is doing with a scratch disk. I'm out of RAM. I need to be able to load more data to work on. So I'm going to use something else. And in this case, that could be anything. It could be your hard drive. It could be an external hard drive. It could be a thumb drive or anything else. But it's going to use some other place to store data. That's what a scratch disk is in the first place. So that'll help you understand what's going on and how to fix it, and then how to prevent it long term, because that's really what we want, is not to keep running into this problem. Okay, so then we have to ask the question, why is it full? First, you got to understand that the scratch disk on your computer will always default to whatever your system disk is. So if you're on a PC, that's going to probably be your C drive. If you're on a Mac, it's going to be your startup disk. Whatever your operating system is sitting on is what Lightroom or Photoshop are going to default your scratch disk settings to. So there's options that we can simply change that, and we'll go into that in just a second. But really what's happening in bottom line is your countertop is full. You just simply do not have enough room to work on that in your RAM. So it's asking for other space, and then it goes to whatever your scratch disk is pointed to, or where it thinks it should go to get extra space, and then that disk is also full. So it's like, a garage with just too much stuff. You just cannot put anything more in it. So that's why it's throwing the error. It's saying, hey, your scratch disk is full. We can't do this. You've got to do something about it. So let's look at what do we do about that. Okay, so how to fix it is obviously what's really important here. So first, we're going to go through the short-term solution. Let's assume that you need this to work right now, today, and you're willing to put up with the fact that this is not going to be the fastest thing, but at least it's going to get you through editing this session and get it out to your client. So let's go ahead and look at this. On a PC, and you just have to adapt this a little bit for a Mac, but on a PC, I'm just going to go down here to my File Explorer, and I'm going to bring that open. On the left-hand side here, you can see where it says this PC, and I'm going to click on that, and that's going to bring me down here to where it says Devices and Drives. You see here I have a local disk, C:, and in this case, I've still got about a half a terabyte open of information, so I wouldn't have any problem with Photoshop being able to use that as a scratch disk. However, if this was really low and you had, say, less than 16 gigabyte available there, Photoshop may decide that it can't do what it needs to do with that. It just doesn't have enough room, especially depending on what you're using, what kind of data you're working on at the time. And then this computer doesn't have another drive in it other than just a DVD-ROM drive, which it can't use. So if I need to fix this in the short run, I'm just going to grab an external hard drive or an external SSD. The SSD would be faster, but the external hard drive works in a pinch. You can't do a thumb drive for this. It's just too slow. But if you did have another system disk here, a lot of people are in a situation where they maybe have a C drive and a D drive, or C and F, something along those lines, and the other one has plenty of room and they can't figure out why they're always out of room, and it's simply because Photoshop is defaulting to that startup disk, which may actually be quite small. If that's the case, we can simply point it to whatever other disk you happen to have sitting over here, and I'll show you how to do that. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and plug in this external drive, which you can do, because I'm sure you got one of those laying around somewhere. And so that's going to get plugged in here, and you see that popped up here as D drive. And it has 1.81 terabytes free, so this has nothing on it. It's just an empty drive. And I'm going to show you how to point your Photoshop to that to use as your scratch disk for this session. So we're going to close that. We're going to go to Photoshop, and if we're on a PC, when we open up Photoshop, we're going to hold Control-Alt during the load screen. If you're on a Mac, you're going to hold Command and Option while it's loading. And that's going to bring up the scratch disk, the ability to change that. So I'm going to go ahead and double click that. I'm going to hold Control and Alt while this is loading. And that brings up my scratch disk preferences. So this allows me to move my scratch disk preferences. So in this case, let's say that my system drive C colon was full. It wasn't reporting enough free space here. I'm going to come up here to D colon, where it had a new free space. So that's the drive I just put in. Or if you already had an existing drive, a second drive in your system that had room on it, you could pick that. You're going to go ahead and click that, hit OK, and then it's going to go ahead and load in through Photoshop. And now it has plenty of room available for this session. If you're using an external drive, it's going to be way slower than an internal drive, but it may do the trick to get you through this session until we can fix this more long term. So we're going to go ahead and stop. All right, so that was short-term solution number one. Short-term solution number two is simply to clean up the drive that is existing that's too full. So you're going to have to just delete some data so that you have room to work today. Again, this will only get you through a few sessions until you run into this problem again, but at least it gets you through today and gets you on to keeps you working. So on a PC, if the way to check this, of course, is you go into Edit, you go down here. Oh, and I should say on a Mac, it just starts off, you hit the Photoshop menu, and then you hit Preferences, and then you hit Scratch Disks. On a PC, you hit Edit, then you hit Preferences, and then you hit Scratch Disks. So right here is Scratch Disks. I click that. It brings up that area again. You're going to see that what you have where it says free space is going to be a very low number. Probably like 8 gigabytes or less. And you're going to go, oh no, I've got to clean up this drive. So in that case, you just simply got to go delete some stuff, or you have to offload it onto some external media, or however you prefer to back things up. But you're going to have to get yourself enough space to work today. So try to get yourself at least 32 gigs. That makes Photoshop happy and makes you happy. So there you go. That's what you need to do for short-term solution 2. Okay, so let's look at longer term solutions. One, if you're running into this problem often, it's because you're overloading your RAM. So let's first off find out how much your computer has. I'm going to show you how to do that. And then let's talk about what you can do about it. So if you're on a Mac, you're going to go up in the top left corner. There's going to be the little Mac symbol. You're going to click that. You're going to hit About This Mac, and you're going to click the memory icon. That'll show you exactly how much you have and if you have any available expansion slots. On a PC, you're going to go down to where it says type here to search. You're going to type in DXDIAG. We're going to click that, and then that will bring us to this screen right here. It may ask you if you want to check for digitally signed drivers. Just hit yes if that's the case. There's a line right here. It says memory, and it says in this case 32,768. That is 32 gig of RAM. Which is the amount I recommend for anybody who's working with video or working with Photoshop a lot. If you're working in Lightroom primarily, you can probably still get away with 16 gig of RAM. Any less than that, you're going to be running into problems all the time. But if you're in Photoshop, I'd recommend getting to 32. So what can you do about it if you don't have 32? Well, if you're on a PC, those are largely upgradable. If you're not sure, that's simply get a free consult with me. I'll tell you whether it's available. If you're on a Mac, it'll depend on the model, how much it can support. But you can probably upgrade this relatively cheaply so that you're not continuously running into this problem. Next, we'll look at your storage. Okay, so if you had to do either one of the first two short-term solutions, you probably also don't have, unless you were in the case where you had the 2 internal drives and you just weren't using one of them that had a lot of empty space, then you probably either need to look at adding a secondary internal drive or upgrading the one that you do have. So that could be as simple as taking it into the Mac store if you've got a Mac. It could be as simple as buying one and plugging it in if you've got a PC. But it's definitely something we can talk you through and see if it's worth doing for you. So to check on a PC, the easiest way is to go ahead and click down here on the little folder, go up and look at your devices and drives, and just simply check how much is there. If If you right click on it and hit properties, it shows you a fancier version of it, but it's the same information. How much room do I have open? Now, if you want, you could just simply offload a lot of data. Or you could say, man, I really need a bigger drive here. And drives come down very quickly in price over time. So that is definitely an option. You can add a second drive and use that. I highly recommend using SSDs at this point. So that's a solid state drive instead of a hard drive because they are considerably faster. You should always be working off a solid state drive as a photographer. On a Mac, in order to check this, you simply go up to the Apple symbol, hit About This Mac, and then look underneath where it says Storage. When you hit Storage, that's going to go ahead and give you the information for what you have for storage drives there. Okay, so you've added more RAM, or maybe you had enough. You've added more storage space in terms of an additional SSD or got a bigger one. But eventually, if you don't fix your workflow of how you're managing your data in terms of how you import, how you export, and then how you back up and remove that data from your system, you're just going to end up with a full closet again. Once the closet is full, once the counter space is full, there's just no room to work. So we'd ideally like you to be able to go from the closet on the left to the closet on the right, meaning it's in control for you and you know where your data is going. So if you're not sure how to do this, this is the kind of thing that we consult with directly. We're also going to be doing some videos right here for you so that you can see exactly how to do this so you don't end up in the situation where eventually you just got to kind of throw your computer away and get a new one because it's just too full. So you definitely need to think, if you're running into this problem and you've already addressed the hardware things, you also need to address how you're dealing with your data so that you can end up having a really smooth system that doesn't just go back to having this problem in 6 months. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, or if anything was unclear, or you want to talk through this, get a hold of us directly. You can get us easily through Instagram. You can follow us on YouTube for more information. Thank you very much, and we hope it helped.